The Wicked Prince of Moli. I'll never forget the night I saw him, the Wicked Prince, walking under the moonlight, his eyes glowing like hot embers. They said he was cursed, but I didn't believe it until that dreadful evening. Moli was a small village, peaceful and quiet. We knew everyone, but the prince was different. He lived in a grand palace, surrounded by thick walls that seemed to keep the sun from shining inside. The people whispered stories about him, how he once loved the girl who left him for another, and how he transformed into something dark and twisted afterward. They called him the Precious One, but there was nothing precious about him anymore. It started on a stormy night. My friends and I were gathered at my house, telling tales and laughing over a fire. Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. I opened it to find a man covered in mud and rain, shaking with fear. The prince. He's coming, he gasped before collapsing. We rushed outside, thinking he was mad. But as the rain poured down, we heard it, a low growl echoing through the trees. The air became heavy, and a chill ran down my spine. The villagers began to gather, their faces pale and worried. Then, we saw him. The prince emerged from the shadows, his skin glistening like wet stone. His hair was wild, and he wore a tattered robe, as if he had been living in the forest. But it was his eyes that terrified me. They held darkness, a deep emptiness that swallowed hope. "Why do you gather?" he hissed, his voice barely a whisper, yet it carried through the growing storm. "You fear me, don't you?" We stood frozen, unable to answer. He took a step closer, and I felt the ground shake beneath me. "I'm not here to hurt you. I come to find what was taken from me," he said, and I noticed his hands were stained with something dark. The villagers murmured among themselves, recalling the old stories of sacrifices made to appease the spirits when crops failed. They said the prince had sacrificed something precious to regain his power but had instead cursed himself. Some believed he needed more than just blood, he needed a soul. Suddenly, he let out a scream that pierced the night. "Bring her to me. The one who broke my heart." He looked at me directly, and the air thickened with dread. I realized I bore a striking resemblance to the girl he lost. I stumbled back, my heart racing. Just then, an elder stepped forward, his voice steady despite the fear surrounding us. "Prince, you cannot bring her back with anger and despair. You must seek forgiveness." The prince's face twisted with rage, and I saw the flicker of something ancient and monstrous deep within him. "Forgiveness," he bellowed. "What good is forgiveness when all I have is this cursed existence?" In a flash, he lunged toward the elder, but before he could reach him, the ground opened up with a loud roar, and tendrils of darkness shot up around him. It was as if the earth itself was rejecting him, the curse was consuming him. "Run!" the elder shouted, and we all turned to flee. I looked back just once and saw the prince being pulled into the depth of the earth, his scream swallowed by the darkness. The storm faded as quickly as it had come, leaving only silence. From that night on, Moli changed. We spoke of the wicked prince only in whispers. The palace fell to ruin, and the forest grew wild around it. Though we forgot much, the terror lived on in our hearts. And sometimes, when the wind howls just right, I swear I can still hear the prince calling for the one thing he could never have: redemption.
Follow me for part 2.